Hello guys, and today we're going to be talking about layers in Photoshop. Now, this may not be the most interesting tutorial, let alone the most complicated. In fact, it is really quite simple. The first thing I would like to show you before anything is the difference between a smart object and a not so smart object. This will be the smart object, and this will be just regular plain old layer. So let's convert this to a smart object. And now it has this little icon. So we'll say we want to shrink this image down to size about right here. And we'll shrink this one down to the same size. Okay, now let's say we don't like that. So what would we do? We have to resize it. It's kind of pixelated. You don't really see, but it's blurry. However, if we compare it back to this, in which it remembers, ta-da! You see that? White squares. No, I'm just kidding. But, as you can see, this one is more blurry than this one. Now, another cool thing about layers is you can stack them. Now, in other tutorials I've shown you guys, I showed you the coloring tutorials in which layers do mean something. For example, put a black circle here, blue circle here, and some kind of red. Now, for layers, you can stack them on top of each other. So now the black's on top. It kind of gets like an order tree. So if I want to put the black in the middle between the red and the red's on top, the red will overlap the black. The same with the blue will actually go under the black. Another thing I showed you guys was the overlay effect. But there's many effects you can use, such as dissolve, darken, multiply, color burn, linear burn, darken color, in which I always say experiment with these because sometimes it just helps to do that. Sometimes you also get crazy color issues in which, you know, if I hit hue it just went white. So if I went to difference it went to blue. You also get overlay or soft light overlay, but as you can see there's nothing there. So if we change it to black, nothing there. Usually with overlay, it kind of works on this kind of color scale. More or less, overlay works like a shading is a better way to put it. So for example, let's get rid of this and we'll put green here, change it back to black, then we'll go to overlay, and as you can see it kind of fills it with this darkened shade color. It's not exactly black, but it's not exactly green either. So we'll put a blue here. Change it back to black. Where was it? So overlay. Oh yes. I was getting confused, and it is right because this is the dark green. It's just not showing it the way I thought I was going to do. I guess I'm so used to using lighter colors that it works like that. Another thing with layers is you can create masking layers, in which we went over that before. Masking layers pretty much it goes into this solid object. For example, let's unlock that. Create a mask, clipping mask, and then we'll put red, change this brush to an airbrush, and looky there, we got red. Another cool thing you can do with masking layers is you can also apply a mask to the object. My bad. In which case, that object you can erase by hiding or revealing. And this can also be a cool little thing for effects you can do. Let's see what else we can teach you here. I've already showed you the adjustment layers, which really does help better. And the effects is the effects panel of the layer, in which what the effects panel of the layer does is, like, for example, let's say we want to spice this image up a bit. So we go to blending options, and we can add a bevel emboss, give it some depth, size the depth a bit, make it look like a button, add a, where's the drop shadow? Drop shadow. Never use dark black unless it's a core shadow. You give it some distance to make it look like a shadow. Add some size to give it a blur effect. You can add an outer glow, which isn't really good for this kind of object, but you can also spread the glow. You can also put patterns, gradients, which gradients is the good thing to be using for this kind of ordeal, because you can use like the same red and blend it, or you could lighten it, whichever fits your fancy or tickles your fancy. And you can also change the color within the layers and also use a different blend mode like linear burn, overlay, subtract, difference. And you can add satin, inner glow, inner shadow, and stroke. That's the effects panel, and you can okay, there you go. The effects panel also works for text-based layers too. For example, we'll type in hello, and we'll change it to a more bold-faced fonts, if we can find one right quick. There we go. We'll just change it to that, and we'll type this as 150 points to size it up. There we go. You can use the blending options, and for example, the gradient overlay. We'll say I want this to be a shade of blue, so we'll pick this light blue and this darkish blue. We'll add this to the center. That way we give it like a reflective tone to it. You could scale it, and we'll give it a radial blur, and we'll give it a drop shadow to give it more depth. And then we'll size it up because I can't really see this myself. As it gave it depth, and now we have two images that are layer based, and again this is under, so it will appear right here or over. That's how you use layers. There's many different ways you can use layers. You can go up here to a layer and you can create new layers from background, group from layers, duplicate, delete, rename, give a style, adjustment layer, fill layer, mask, vector mask, which a vector is a line that never has a pixel, in which case we'll have to get to that another day, which is an Adobe Illustrator kind of thing. And this is a raster based program, so you can create a clipping mask, smart objects, you can rasterize an image which is already rasterized, a new layer based slice, which slicing we'll definitely have to get into. That's more for the web design purpose, because for example, it's also for many other things, but for me I use it for web design, which is to kind of cut out and give a purpose to an image or an individual image as a separate image. So for like a navigation bar, these are the navigation buttons. You can arrange, group, hide, merge, flatten, and use matting. And there's a lot you can do with layers, and layers are your best friend, especially for digital painting, drawing, graphic designing, web designing, you name it. Layers are your best friend, and you never use everything on one layer. Because if you, for example, want separate images on separate layers to where you can move them, that's what layers are for. However, if you don't use those and you have it all in one image, you have one big image. So for example, we'll combine these two. We'll merge these layers and put this here, have the cap locks on. Okay, so we'll say I wanted to move this thing. Oh no, but there's a way to fix it, don't worry. It doesn't work 100% of the time because, well, to be honest, it can if you just use like a pen tool or something. Okay, so we'll make a selection. Okay, and then you could take the M and cut it out. You could also do a cut via layer, but it also gives it these white edges sometimes. Usually not, because it's on a vector based layer or a transparent layer, so there's nothing in the background. But never do it all in the background. Some digital painters do that, but if you mess up, it's kind of a hard fix. I hope you guys found this somewhat helpful. We'll be getting into more detail on some slicing and everything else down the road, and what a vector is, and yada yada yada. And I hope you enjoyed this and find it useful, and share it. And I will see you next week, or maybe in a little more time. I can't say for sure for next week, but we'll see you next time.